Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvasesha Shunyavadi Pastachare Shatharini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvasesha Sunyavadi Pastachare Shatharini Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gauravakta Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gauravakta Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Shiva Saditi Ora Bhakta Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Shiva Saditi Ora Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna Hare Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Hare. Jai Shri Prabhupada ki Jai. Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki Jai. Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Govinda Madhava ki Jai. Shri Prabhupada Transcendental Book Marathon ki Jai. Guntaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Go Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Sri Prabhupada. Jai. Hare Krishna. Vanchakal Patrubhyascha. Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha. Patitanam Pavanebhyo. Vaishnavebhyo. Namo Namaha. Oh, Hare Krishna, everybody. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. We are in Paris, and we're staying in an apartment in Paris, and just adjust the screen a little bit. And we're coming to the end of our Prabhupada book marathon. Maybe you're having them already finished. If you're having a book marathon in your local temple or local area, but we'll be carrying on till the end of December, Krishna willing. We'll try to distribute as many of Sri Prabhupada's books as we can here in France. So far, we've managed to distribute approximately 5,000 Bhagavad Gitas this month, and we're hoping to reach at least 6,000. See what Krishna arranges, and a little less than 5,000, 4,800. And we've had 101 devotees so far participate in distributing books. Many of them just distributing one or two books, magazines, books, whatever. But this is a yagya. Yagya by Vishnu. Yagya is meant, yagya meaning a sacrifice. Now, it can be termed in terms of an austerity also sometimes. But in practical terms, it means the performance of an activity, ultimately for the pleasure yagya by Vishnu, of Lord Vishnu. Other people may be undergoing, sometimes we say yagyas for material reasons, but they're fruitless, or they're fruitful in terms of the material energy, but ultimately they're Shrama Evi Kevalam, they're no real value. Even in modern day society, some imitation Vedic yagyas are performed to try to achieve material purposes. And there also, even if there is some degree of relative success, ultimately they're of no real value. Because unless yagya brings an end to suffering, there's not very much point. Yagya, just to make us feel a little more comfortable within the suffering, is hardly a success. So this yagya, this Sankirtan yagya Sankirtanam Prayari Jantihi Sumeda Shaha, is the yagya in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is mentioned there, is the yagya which for intelligent people, it doesn't seem like, it seems like the Sankirtan yagya is very simple compared to even some of the other Vedic yagyas which people imitate. But it's the intelligent one, because in Kali Yuga, people don't have very much intelligence. Or for Medasha, their intelligence is very meager intelligence in Kali Yuga. They haven't got the brain substance practically to understand such transcendental subject matters in Kali Yuga. People are lazy, misguided, disturbed. Above all, all is disturbed in Kali Yuga. So the intelligent person doesn't try to understand the absolute truth by intellectual pursuit. Maybe that can be applied, but that's not the actual method. Neither by great austerities or by the forms of, you could say, Vedic yagyas, but simply by embracing the Sankirtan yagya, which was introduced by, as we all know, by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for the people of this age, to immerse us all in the ocean of devotional service. So, and to say, we're trying to perform this little yagya here in France. We're getting a lot of results, and like when the pastime in Bhagavatam, we hear of the churning of the milk ocean, how out of the milk ocean came all kinds of ingredients. Some of them, we could say positive, some of them negative, some demoniac, some divine. Results came. So similarly, when we start to perform yagya, certainly dirty things may come up from within our hearts, so karmas are released, and many good things also. Not to speak of the beneficial effect of disseminating this knowledge of Krishna consciousness to people in general. Even if they don't immediately apply it in their lives, nonetheless, they've begun their spiritual sojourn, their spiritual path or awakening. So today we're going to discuss a little bit, not directly on the subject, but everything is related to the fulfillment of Radharani's desire to see that all living entities return back to Godhead. And that's why the Lord appears in this form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to fulfill Radharani's desire. A long story. So the Sankirtan movement is based on that principle of fulfilling the heart desire of Srimati Radharani, and how to preach, how to approach that, how to actually say enter into that mood. So we're going to discuss a little bit today about how one can enter into that mood. So maybe let me see now, where are we? Maybe Rasikananda Prabhu, you could possibly find from Srimad Bhagavatam, verse Canto 7, chapter 5, verse 32. This is quite a famous verse. It's a verse spoken by one of our gurus, Prahlad Maharaj, who spoke this verse to his father. His father, of course, was very enthusiastic to hear from his son about all the nice things that he's been hearing and so on and so forth. But when he heard that his son was not so, say, inclined towards the usual education in society, his father became a little perturbed and where have you got this nonsense from, etc., etc. And anyway, Prahlad Maharaj gave him some very nice preaching And this is one of those verses after Matina Krishna Parataksato Vamitobi Padyeta Grihavitanam, famous verse, and Tevidu Svatagatim Hivishnam Durashya Ye Bahim Atamanina. Famous verses from the Bhagavatam. And then in this verse, which is text 32 of the 5th chapter, you may have the book in front of you, otherwise you can hopefully follow on the screen. I'll read it through and we can repeat it once, if we can keep the screen stable there. Thank you. Naish Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I have to excuse me being a little quiet. This main reason is not because of my health. It's mainly because we're staying in this apartment. It is Sunday morning, the day after Christmas, and you can hear a pin drop. There's not a sound around. There's nobody. We're in the center of the city. We're in a very busy part of the city, but there's nobody around, not even a sound of a bicycle passing by or a bird or anything. I think everyone's sleeping. So we have to bear that in mind. I hope you can hear, because I can't, if I speak much louder, we'll probably hear the neighbors joining in our program. Okay, so we'll move on with this verse. Naisham matisthavadarukkramangring Sprishatyanata pagamo yadartaha Mahiyasam padavajobhishekam Niskinchananam na vinitayavat. Naisham matisthavadarukkramangring Sprishatyanata pagamo yadartaha Mahiyasam padavajobhishekam Niskinchananam na vinitayavat. So we have the synonyms. I don't know if we won't touch the synonyms much. Go to the end of the synonyms. Stop at the end. That's it. Okay, good. And we'll go through for the, there's some very famous words in this verse, of course. Niskinchana. Devotees who have nothing to do with the material world. This is very, let's say, well-known word, Abhishek. Abhishekam, of course, we use it to define various things. Here, so it was consecrated. Which is consecrated. Padaraja, the dust of the lotus feet. The dust of the lotus feet. Anyway, many wonderful words are there. Other words, like here we have anartha, unwanted things. And now we're going to go forward to the translation, please. So this verse spoken by Prahlad Maharaj to his father was a bit too much for Hiranyakashipu to digest. Got a bit upset after this verse was spoken. So Prahlad Maharaj said, unless they smear upon their bodies the dust of the lotus feet of a Vaishnava, completely free from material contamination, persons very much inclined toward materialistic life cannot be attached to the lotus feet of the Lord, who is glorified for his uncommon activities. Only by becoming Krishna conscious and taking shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord in this way can one be free from material contamination. Can one be attached to him? We can move on to the purport. The Prabhupada's purport. Becoming Krishna conscious brings about anartha apagamaha, means the disappearance of anarthas. If you don't know what anarthas means, it means one can have different meanings, but basically unwanted or unnecessary material desires. Attachments to objects which cause us to remain in this material state of life. The material body is the basic principle of these unwanted, miserable conditions. We're always trying to fulfill the needs of this material body. There are basic needs, and there are needs which are not so absolutely necessary, simply for trying to increase the pleasure of this body. And they are considered anarthas. There are certain arthas. Arthas means needed, that which is necessary. Requirements for the body. We do need to feed the body, rest the body, clean the body, and so on. Maybe also mating is in that category up to a point. But beyond and above that, it can be in the category of an anartha, something which is an obstacle, an attachment, something which will bind us. The material body is a basic principle. The entire Vedic civilization is meant to relieve one from these unwanted miseries. But persons bound by the laws of nature do not know the destination of life. As described in the previous verse, Ishatantriyam uradamni badha, they are conditioned by the three strong modes of material nature. Bound up, the word guna means mode, it also means rope. So basically the living entity is bound by the ropes of material nature. And that's not by chance, it's not it is misfortune, but it's not a chance misfortune. It's by our own man, is the architect of his own misfortune. By our own desire, our attachment to the objects which manifest due to the interaction of the modes of nature with time. We remain attached to this situation. We can't blame Maya, the modes of nature, other living entities. It's our own choice to be in this situation. The education that keeps the conditioned soul bound life after life is called materialistic education. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has explained that materialistic education expands the influence of Maya. And the whole world is full of materialistic education, whatever form it comes in. But basically speaking, the world in general is just being materially educated. Bodily platform of life, trying to improve the level standard of living in the material world. It's not our real home any more than a prison is our normal home. Trying to improve the condition of living in a prison is not very intelligent. I mean, maybe if you're in a prison, you probably want to do that, but the intelligent prisoner will try to act in a way to get released from the prison, not just try to make his situation a permanent one of a better nature. It doesn't work anyway. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has explained that material education expands the influence of Maya. Such an education induces the conditioned soul to be increasingly attracted to materialistic life and to stray further and further away from liberation from unwanted miseries. As far as now, people read the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada, in commenting on Rupa Goswami's Nectar of Devotion, described freedom from distress. There's not so much what people think of freedom from distress in terms of carrying on with whatever we're doing without the suffering aspect, without the frustration or anxiety or fear, etc. It's not quite like that. It's freedom from distress means being freed from activities or behavior that causes distress. That's something that people in general don't really put a lot of emphasis on. Within the realm of their, sometimes they say honesty amongst thieves, within the realm of their misbehavior or their materialistic ignorance, they have certain rules and regulations to preserve whatever their idea of civilization is. Certain rules and regulations are there, some of them based on God's directive, some of them not. And nowadays, many of them are not. For instance, the abortion law has become a kind of an issue in some places. In most places, it's not an issue at all. It's been well gone. But this is a man-made interpretation also, but meddling with God's laws. One of many instances like this. We incorporate irreligion to be accepted. Unless, one may ask why highly educated persons do not take to Krishna consciousness. The reason is explained in this verse. Unless one takes shelter of a bona fide, fully Krishna conscious spiritual master, there's no chance of understanding Krishna. That was explained a couple of verses earlier. Atina Krishna Padatuksvatovam Tobi Padyeta Grihavitanam, where Prahlad Maharaj said that for those who are done to go be or attached to material sense gratification, or Griya Rata, who are very attached to family life, etc., we have responsibility, but when it becomes the goal of our life, then it becomes it's not our responsibility. It becomes irresponsible. And one becomes bound up in that mentality. With that type of mentality, we cannot understand Vyavasayatmika, but you have to process what to speak of the goal behind the process to understand Krishna. The inclination process, even the inclination doesn't take place. By your own effort, by efforts of others, no. Because our consciousness is too much absorbed. We have to hear, as Prabhupada is saying here, we have to hear from those who are in the verse Niskinchan, those who are freed on this, those Nivritri, Nivrita Tashir Bhagyamanad Bhavoshri Chotramanobi Ramat. You have to hear from those who are Nivrita Krishna, those who have no material affection. No material affection doesn't mean no affection. It means based upon material compassion, just like Arjuna was basing his arguments in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita on material compassion, material affection for his family, for society, and so on and so forth. When we're devoid of understanding of the actual nature of the self, and some influence of the mode of goodness mixed with passion and a lot of ignorance results in some kind of material compassion. But it's not real compassion, like compassion in a dream or something. Real compassion is based upon the spiritual condition, spiritual situation of the living entity being in ignorance or bound up in the bodily concept of life. When knowledge is supposed to be human life specifically for releasing the living entity from the bodily concept of life. And that's one takes shelter. So that's the point. And that's one, as Krishna himself explains in Bhagavad Gita, that if we want to know this truth, we have to approach a spiritual master. There's no chance. The educators, scholars, and big political leaders worshipped by millions of people cannot understand the goal of life and take to Krishna consciousness, for they have not accepted a bona fide spiritual master of the Vedas. They don't know, they worship. People have an inclination to worship. People have an inclination to follow somebody, but they don't know who to follow. Neither they know how to follow. And basically they follow materialistic people, persons who are expert in whatever area that the one's attachment is in. We try to follow them or emulate them or worship them, glorify them, etc., whether it's in the world of sport, music, politics, economics, sense gratification in various forms. We make different types of heroes in this world. Heroes who bring about a more peaceful situation within this illusory state of consciousness. So many different heroes people have, and relatively speaking, they may be praised. They may go down for a few years in history. Yesterday we had Christmas Day, because it's different. Jesus Christ is not on the material world. He's out from the spiritual realm, but at the same time, most people have a materialistic, relationship in that sense, because it's based on a bodily concept of life. And we can see, of course, for genuine followers of Jesus Christ, it's different. But for the majority of people who identify themselves as being some kind of Christian, for instance, Christmas Day is far, far from a day of actually following or glorifying Lord Jesus. It's actually the most sinful day on the planet, practically speaking, where more liquor, more meat, more gambling, and more gluttony take place, and even more sex, it's said, than any other day of the year. Quite the opposite to what Lord Jesus Christ tried to explain to people. But somehow another example of, you could say, of not following or creating our own understandings of things. Therefore, in the Mundaka Upanishad, it is said, Nayam Atma Prabhachene na Labhyo na Medaya na Bhuna Sutena. One cannot become self-realized simply by having an academic education, by presenting lectures in an erudite way, Prabhachene na Labhya, or by being an intelligent scientist who discovers many wonderful things. One cannot understand Krishna unless one is graced by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's a very significant statement. Or by being an intelligent scientist, just like the scientists now are very proud. They've just spent God knows how many billions of dollars supposedly sending something up into outer space. Well, what use does it do anyone? It's just no value whatsoever. But they spend all their energy in these type of things, and they never understand God, even if they go from one corner of the universe to the other. He's not some object which can be measured by some telescope or whatever it is, some formula. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is beyond the purview of ordinary senses. Takshi Krishna Namadi, the Bhava Graham Indri, Siva Mukhi Jiva Swam Mavis Prajitaha. We cannot understand him with our material senses. Why? Because he reveals himself. And he reveals himself to one he chooses. Only one can understand Krishna only unless one cannot understand unless one is graced. We have to get the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Only one who has surrendered to a pure devotee of Krishna and taken the dust of his lotus feet can understand Krishna. This is the essence. One has to take the dust of the lotus feet of a pure devotee. So this subject matter is discussed on occasions, but in various places, various acharyas, as to how this impacts on our lives, how we take the dust of the lotus feet of the pure devotees of the Lord. First, one must understand how to get out of the clutches of Maya. The only means is to become Krishna conscious. And to become Krishna conscious very easily, one must take shelter of a realized soul, a Mahat or Mahatma, whose only interest is to engage in the service of the Supreme Lord. Hold on, don't go quite that fast. Does it stop? The only means is to become Krishna conscious. And to become Krishna conscious very easily, one must take shelter of a realized soul. That's the secret. That's the only real good fortune in this world, is to get that opportunity to take shelter of a realized soul. Someone who's seen the truth. So the verse may come up in a minute. We can carry on. First, Prabhupada quotes the verse in the ninth chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Mahatmanastamam Pata Daivam Prakritim Ashritaha Ajanchananya Manaso Gyatva Bhutani Mavayam. O son of Prita, those who are not deluded, the great souls are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. Therefore, to end the unwanted miseries of life, one must become a devotee. Everyone wants to end the miseries, but we don't want to become a devotee because it means we have to surrender. Devotee is not just somebody who wears a tilak and whatever, probably called flag, and things like that, beads or something. But it's a state of consciousness, it's a state of surrender. Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavata kinchana sarvaganas tatra samasato sada. A famous verse. So, one who has unflinching devotional faith in Krishna consistently manifests all the good qualities of Krishna and the demigods. They're constantly in touch with Krishna. One has faith in Krishna is you're not talking to somebody who has flickering faith. You carry on doing whatever material desires push us to do as much as one can. Go to church or temple once in a while, follow some rituals, but basically no real change of heart. And piety, some recognition, better than nothing, but nothing very deep. So therefore the good qualities of Krishna and the demigods don't actually manifest. Some maybe karmically, sometimes some reflection of those qualities manifest through the modes of nature. One's considered to be a nice person, a kind person, etc., etc. All very well and good from the material point of view, but unless engaged in the relationship with Krishna, have no real good value. As Prabhupada said in one of his translations to this verse, and sometimes it said they have no good qualities because the good qualities are not ours. They're simply results of karma. And good qualities means when the soul is released, no longer under the control of karma, and natural qualities manifest automatically. It's not a question of, practice. It's not a question of situation one's in. It's not a question of, who one's with and so on and so forth. It's just the nature of the pure soul. Pure soul by nature is full of all divine qualities. So that's a natural thing that one will manifest those. So one who is not in a pure state of mind doesn't really have any good qualities. All they have is some karmic reflections of those good qualities according to their activities, etc. And relative to others, they're classified as, good qualities, but there's not directly the soul manifesting those qualities. And the other aspect is that Prabhupada gives there is that even if they appear from the material point of view to have good qualities, what is the use of those qualities? They have no value if they're not engaged in the service of Krishna. They're only maybe in the mode of goodness from the comparative point of view, but even if they are in the mode of goodness, so what? Because in the mode of goodness is also binding in this material world. So the qualities which release us, the real qualities are those qualities which release us from bondage, not those qualities which continue us in the bondage of birth and death. So we're going next. Yasya Devi Parabhakti Tade Vedadakaro Tashyate Katidakyata Karshante Mahatmanaha. Very famous verse from the Svetashvatara Upanishad. Only unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master are all the imports of Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. So those great souls who have this faith in the Lord, and it's not just some, as I said earlier on, some flickering faith, it means implicit. Here it says implicit means there's no, the faith is completely in the Lord. It doesn't have a bit of faith here and a bit of faith there, or an imperfect understanding of, let's say, what it means to have faith in the Lord. But faith in the Lord means to completely depend upon the Lord in every situation. And that means it will also be completely in the mood of acting, thinking, feeling, willing exactly the way the Lord would want us to be. If we surrender to someone, it means unconditional. It doesn't mean, well, I can surrender so much, but not that much. You have to, no, it means complete, without any inhibition, without any restriction, completely surrendered. Faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master being the representative of the Lord, being the via media, we could say, to the lotus feet of the Lord is through the spiritual master. Then all the imports, all the meanings of, all the purposes of the Vedic knowledge are automatically revealed. The objectives. Ayam evaisha vinute tena labhyas tasyaisha atma vivinute tanam svam. The Lord is obtained only by one whom he himself chooses. To such a person he manifests his own form. And that shouldn't be misinterpreted. The Lord randomly chooses someone who perhaps he likes the color of their hair or something, or the way they walk. It's not like that. He reveals himself accordingly. But he's the one ultimately. Whatever you do or we do, it doesn't mean the Lord is going to reveal himself. We can follow everything to the T according to some shastric Buddhist rules, guides, and so on and so forth. We can be a very learned scholar. We can be a very austere personality. We can be a very charitable personality. We can be a very good sadhaka in terms of external vision. But that doesn't mean to say the Lord is going, therefore, obligated to reveal himself. He chooses. Sometimes we see he reveals himself to demons for various reasons. There's always a good reason for it, but the Lord has that free will to do as he likes. These are Vedic injunctions. One must take shelter of a self-realized spiritual master, not a materially educated scholar or politician. One must take shelter of a niskinchana, a person engaged in devotional service and free from material contamination. That is the way to return home back to Godhead. This is the only way, really, although we have a process of Mahamantras, chanting the Mahamantra is the only way, according to that Shastra and according to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But even that, the holy name will not reciprocate on that level. The holy name will not reciprocate unless we serve the servants of him, his servants. The whole essence of Vaishnavism is based upon the instructions of, or the principle given by Lord Chaitanya of Gopi Bharta Padakamalama Dasa 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 Anudasa. We're the servant of the servant, 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 servant. We're not direct servants of Krishna. The servants of the servant, 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 servant. Under every devotee, there are pure, we're talking about pure devotees. There's even there, Srila Prabhupada, under whose lotus feet many masters sit. Many gurus sit. In the whole spiritual, if we don't like this principle of initiation or disciplic succession, we're not going to get very far in Goloka Vrindavan, that's for sure, or anywhere in the spiritual would come to that. Maybe in the Brahman, you don't have to worry about that in the Brahma Jyoti. But everywhere else, there is a system of surrender. There's a system. It may not be seen like that. It's because it's a natural thing. It's completely natural. It's not imposed. But there is a hierarchy, if you want to call it that, following. In every party, there's a leader, and there's a main follower, and the assistants of the main follower who have their assistants, who have their assistants, who have their assistants, and 1,000 times removed, or whatever. Bhakti Siddhanta was 100 or 1,000 times removed. Situation more humbler than the straw in the street or blade of grass, more humble. We're not the ones aspiring, I want the lotus feet of Krishna, I want to be right there. No, a devotee doesn't. Maybe some do, but at least the Gaudiya Vaishnava doesn't think like that. A Gaudiya Vaishnava is thinking how they can assist their link, their connection with the Lord through ultimately Srimati Radharani. If you're in Madhura Ras, ultimately Radharani is the gateway for everything in one sense. But that mood of how I can assist the assistants, like this humble mood. I'm not qualified. If Krishna gets more pleasure with Radharani or with one of the cowboy boys, why should I even think about it? All we think about, all one thinks about is how Krishna can get more pleasure. This is the mood. So at the lotus feet of the pure devotees, the eternal associates of the Lord, and those who come into this material world to bring that eternal opportunity to enter into that eternal atmosphere. Anyone with any intelligence takes shelter at their lotus feet. They become instruments, just like a mother and father have children. And for sure, if you want to please the mother or father, pleasing the children is also, you may not need to directly do it depending on one's relationship, but certainly if one displeases the children, the father is more displeased than if you displease him. Much more. If you hit the father, maybe the man will, give you a little punch or something, get out of here. But if you hit his son, the father is ready to kill you, practically speaking. It's stronger. So similarly, the Lord may tolerate, but he can't tolerate when his devotees are offended. And similarly, the devotee of the Lord, when his followers or when his whatever, those who've taken shelter of them are offended by others, he cannot tolerate. We see so many examples of this in the Okay, we don't get so many, you could say. Maybe yesterday and Christmas Day would have been a good, not such a good example. Easter maybe would have been a better example, but there's not much an example of the appropriate follow-up. At least we don't hear of it. But in the case of Lord Nityananda being offended by Jagai and Madai, for instance, a tremendous reaction, because it's from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but tremendous reaction to punish the offender of his devotee. Lord Nityananda is in the mood of a devotee of Lord Chaitanya. So a tremendous reaction there, because Lord Nityananda is like his limb for spreading Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada would also see his disciples like, in a sense, like his arms and limbs to spread this Krishna consciousness, and very concerned for their protection, welfare, etc., because it's a difficult situation, which had to be dealt with in many cases, not so qualified, we could say, not really so advanced or eligible, but still the principle is there. The devotees are dedicating their lives to assisting the pure devotees to spread this Krishna consciousness all over the world. So it's the first offense against the holy name to criticize or blaspheme those devotees. This is very, very displeasing to the pure devotee of the Lord when he sees his, we may not be so qualified, but when he sees devotees who are trying to assist, being, let's say, misdealt with or whatever it is. It's very painful to the pure devotee. So what to speak of to Krishna? And if you please the pure devotee, and on the other side, if you displease or please the pure devotee of the Lord, and that's what controls Krishna's emotion, controls Krishna. If one pleases his pure devotee, Krishna is obligated. If one displeases, Krishna is also obligated the other way. There's no way that you go, as we see an example of Ambarish Maharaj and Devasa Muni. Ambarish Maharaj is a great devotee. Devasa Muni was a yogi. Devasa Muni criticized or blasphemed, or offended, chastised Maharaj Ambarish, who took no offense. He took no offense whatsoever. In fact, he considered himself deserving of what happened, more so than what he got. And he was feeling, I am the cause of this offense. I'm the cause of the suffering of the Muni also. He was taking responsibility. He felt no ill whatsoever. He took it differently. But Devasa was very envious and got angry and tried to kill Ambarish. And as a result, of course, Krishna became enraged and sent his Sudarshan Chakra to kill Devasa. Devasa tried everything he could to protect himself without success, even to the point of entering into the Vaikuntha and falling at Lord's lotus feet, begging for shelter. Take shelter at the feet when one's humble. You see people bow down when they're, I submit myself to you at your feet. So he submitted himself at the feet of the Lord. The Lord said, nothing I can do for you. You've offended my devotee. My devotee is more dear to me than my very self. I don't care for all of my opulences. Without my devotees, they have no value whatsoever. Devotees in my heart, I'm in his. The Lord went on and on again, over and over, describing how dear the devotees were to him. And because you've offended one of my dear devotees, I would not forgive you. And I cannot forgive you. The dust of my lotus feet, I cannot. It's not possible. You have to take shelter of the dust of the lotus feet of the devotee. You have to go to Ambarish and fall at his feet, with your head submitted to him, begging for forgiveness. Now, Ambarish didn't want that. That's the last thing. He wanted to place his head at Devasa's lotus, Devasa's feet, because he felt, himself an offender. But the reality was that Devasa was the offender, and he followed the Lord's instruction. Of course, Ambarish Maharaj, whatever one will say, but Ambarish Maharaj completely felt no offense whatsoever and forgave. If there's anything to forgive, we have to forgive for the sake of the other person, even though one doesn't feel there's an offense. To release them, we have to make it release, otherwise the Lord will not forgive them. The Lord will not release them. It has to be a public thing. When we offend a devotee, there's another nice example. When Haridas Thakur went to the house of Haranya and Govardhan Majumdar, Balaramacharya, the priest, had invited them, Haridas, to speak in the forum there. And Haridas started talking about the glories of the holy name, even in Namabas, how one could easily attain liberation from the material bondage. There was one Brahmin there, Gopal Chakravarti, who didn't quite agree with that. He was actually employed by Haranya and Govardhan Majumdar, who were very rich landowners. He was employed by them to do various services. And he was a Brahmin by birth, and he was very learned. Not very learned, but somewhat learned. Very young and very handsome young Brahmin. And when he heard that Haridas Thakur, who was of course born in the Muslim family and was basically considered by the Hindus, the caste Hindus, as this, lowly birth, etc. And when he heard Haridas speak like this, he thought, who is this guy, sentimental, non-Brahmin, speaking like this? Who does he think he is? And then he started to speak up in the forum, in the presence of others. And he started to say, well, what nonsense is this? Where in the scriptures does it say this? You have to practice, Vedic principles and Brahminical life for many lifetimes before you can expect liberation. You're saying just by one chanting the mantra, this mantra once, Namabas, that you can attain the results of many lifetimes of following, Vedic principles, etc. This is crazy. How can anyone believe what you're saying? So then Haridas Thakur began to explain from various scriptural statements, etc., and various evidences to substantiate his statements. The Brahmin was still not pacified by any means. He said, no, I don't believe this. Who are you? This is, Kali Yuga is really beginning now. The Vedas will be explained by those in the Sudras and the lower classes of life who they think they are. Very proud. He was very puffed up being born a Brahmin. So Haridas was very humble, no problem. He had no problem whatsoever. And don't take it seriously. The Brahmin then became very angry. And he said, if it is not possible to attain liberation, as you say, by Namabas, I will cut off your nose. Everyone was shocked. What's going on? Haridas said, you don't have to waste your time. I assure you, if it is not possible, I'll cut my own nose off. And then Haranya and Govardhan and everyone else became really angry, and they chased the Brahmin out of their assembly. They gave him the sack from his job. They laid him off. And so he went away, and Haridas said, don't worry, don't take it seriously. He's just a young boy. It's nothing to take seriously. And Haridas Thakur went on his way. So after a few days, of course, the young Brahmin, Gopal Chakravarti, suddenly his nose started to melt, and his nose fell off, and his ears fell off, and his fingers started to melt, and his toes. He contracted very nasty leprosy, and all of his limbs started to, very handsome, lost everything, which, naturally, if you lose these pieces of your body, you're no longer considered very beautiful. It's a miserable condition of life, painful situation which he found himself in. Nobody wants to associate with such persons. So he got the result of his sins, you could say. And even when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was present, and the same with Gopal Chapala, who offended Srivas Thakur, and different situations are there. Did even though Haridas Thakur forgave him, there was no problem. He forgave him, so in one sense the Lord would have forgiven him. But because he denounced Haridas Thakur in public, in the presence of all the other devotees, he had to get, you could say, release from all those others who were present too, who took great offense at what this Brahmin said. So if you make a public denouncement of somebody on the internet, this is the worst, you could say, worst case scenario of modern social media, is to criticize devotees on the internet, in public, one-to-one, that's one-to-one one. You're having your own fight in the background. But in public, yeah, there's no release from that one. Even if you pray for forgiveness of the person you are criticizing, it's not going to help much. It's every single person who's come across that has to be, satisfied. Everyone. And at least one has to make a stronger public, you could say, presentation of begging everyone for forgiveness. Otherwise, there's no release. It's just some temporary, maybe relief, but not a relief of the cause of the problem. To get released to the cause of the problem, we have to take shelter like that. And in public, this is one of the examples given in Chaitanya Bhagavat, I think, of Haridas Thakur, and how one becomes released from the tendency to criticize others, the tendency to find fault in others, etc., etc. As much as sometimes the more learning we have, the more dangerous it is, unless the qualities are also simultaneously of humility and tolerance are manifesting or growing simultaneously by being surrendered and submissive and not taking pride, not becoming proud in our course of our actions. And taking shelter of the lotus feet of the devotee, the dust of the lotus feet, the devotees who are surrendered to the devotees who are dear to the devotee. It can also infer, sometimes it's said, the instructions of the pure devotee. When we offend the instructions, you could say, in one sense, instructions do not seem to be personal. They seem to be, you say, something other than that. But nonetheless, they are, because the words of the spiritual master, whatever he speaks, are basically that which pleases Krishna. That which pleases Krishna. And if we disobey or deny the words of the spiritual master, we may not be able to follow, but in humility, we accept that. And we don't try to decry those words. We don't try to cover over those words or change those words. This will also cause blockage in our spiritual progress, for sure. But respecting the words, taking shelter of the lotus feet, the dust of the lotus feet, respecting those instructions, those words of the spiritual master, taking them as our life and soul, even if we cannot, for whatever attached reason or reason it may be, circumstantially follow in the way which would be, complete. But still showing that respect. It's just like a common thing because we're at this stage of the world. History, Christianity, please forgive me for my sins, etc. But if we know we're sinning, the better thing would be, please help me to, I know that sin is not pleasing to you, my Lord. Please, I fall at your, I take shelter of you, take shelter of your devotees. Please help me to avoid committing sins. Why should I keep coming to you and ask you for forgiveness all the time? We should try to avoid committing sins. And that we need help for too. We need help of the dust and lotus feet of the pure devotees. We need help of the devotees for that. Otherwise, where will be the humility, which is you can say in one sense, the cause. It's like if anyone comes to us, maybe they've been naughty or whatever, but they come to us in a very, submissive, surrendered, helpless state. Our natural tendency is to give shelter, even though we may have been, very far apart before, avoiding. But if genuinely a person comes, natural inclination of a devotee is to, forgive, give shelter, etc. So, like that, this is taking shelter of the dust. Not just jumping over. I don't need to do that. I'll just chant Hare Krishna. No, it doesn't work. Krishna would not reciprocate. At least he won't reciprocate like that. He'll reciprocate another way by perhaps giving us a nice slap. But we have to do it. Humility, genuine dainya, genuine humility, taking actual shelter of the dust of the lotus feet of the devotees, taking shelter of their instructions, taking shelter of the devotees who've taken shelter of the devotees, taking shelter of the mood of the pure devotee, their mood. This is also sometimes described I think Vishwanath Chakravarti or someone describing this is also an aspect of that. We take shelter of that mood of the pure devotee. That's why, generally speaking, at least on a higher level, one approaches a devotee according to the particular mood of that devotee in relationship with Krishna. On this plane, it may be their mood in relationship with Vaidhi Bhakti or preaching Krishna consciousness that attracts our attention, or maybe geographical or some other reasons. But on the absolute platform, is their actual mood of loving affection with Krishna. One takes shelter therein. There's no question of any lack of chastity in that regards. But taking shelter is the secret of success of the devotee. Taking shelter of the devotee, taking shelter of the dust of the lotus feet of the devotee is the secret for receiving the mercy of Krishna. In fact, the devotee is the mercy of Krishna. The dust is the mercy of Krishna. We have to take shelter of that mercy coming in our way. This is how genuine humility evokes or awakens within our consciousness. And in their presence, one can tolerate any kind of, say, distraction or even offenses from others or whatever it may be. All the pains and troubles of the material world, everything which we actually take in shelter of the lotus feet of the devotees. It's the only shelter. There is no other shelter. Other shelters are only temporary shelters and cannot protect us from the sojourn of birth and death in this world. Only the shelter of the pure devotees of the Lord. Okay, well, let's see what time we've got now. It's 10 o'clock. I'll just read one or two things and then we'll hand over to the questions and answers. There's a very similar verse, very, very similar verse in the 5th canto. In the interesting pastime in the 5th canto, when Jad Bharat, previously Bharat Maharaj, was basically behaving like an avadut, like a madman. And he was treated a bit like a dumb fool by people in general, even his own family. His own brothers, after the departure of the father, gave him away, basically. They just treated him like a slave, or partly sold him. And one time when the king of that area, King Rahugana, was coming by, some of his palanquin bearers, the carriers of the palanquin, fell sick. So they're looking for more people to carry, some strong men to carry the palanquin. So it so happened they were near the place where Jad Bharat happened to be looking after some animals in the field or something. And they grabbed him and said, he looks a good candidate for this. So Jad Bharat had no objection. He didn't say anything, he just was like dumbed. So they just brought him and showed him what to do and put him on one of the columns of the palanquin with the intention that he would carry the palanquin for the king, amongst others. So as the king, then they started up the journey again, and as they're going, suddenly Jad Bharat, seeing that there was some ants on the floor, started to move right and left to avoid stepping on the ants. So the palanquin was going all over the place like this. The king said, what is going on here? What's wrong with you palanquin bearers? Carry it steadily. They would say, no, dear Lord, it's not us. It's this new fellow. He's not doing his job. So then King Rahugana became very angry with him. And first of all, he chastised him at first, but nothing happened. From that one, they started getting angry with him and chastising him like anything, calling him a nonsense rascal. You look strong and stout, but you're not. On and on he went, And Jad Bharat was just listening without any seeming reaction. You're just a fool. And he was going on chastising him. And eventually Jad Bharat then responded, which was a surprise to everyone. They never heard him speak. And he took all the words of the king in such a way, yes, I'm not strong, I'm not stout, I'm not a good this or a bad that or any of these things. Because you have to understand, neither you are king and neither you are the ruler of this kingdom, etc., because we're not this body. You're a spirit. So he started to preach to the king like anything. And the king was, after a while, was taken by surprise that this dumb, so-called dullard, was preaching to him like this. Where on earth is this coming from? Who is this person who's speaking like this? Couldn't understand him. And so then one of the answers given by Jad Bharat was this one. Rohoi ganaitat tapasanayati nachejaya nirvapanad vihadma nachandasana natandasanaiva jalagni suryai vinamahat parvajobhishekam. Famous line, Mahatpada Rajo Bhishekam. My dear King Rahugana, unless one has the opportunity to smear his entire body with the dust of the lotus feet of great devotees, one cannot realize the absolute truth. One cannot realize the absolute truth simply by observing celibacy, strictly following the rules and regulations of household life, leaving home as a vanaprastha, accepting sannyas, or undergoing severe penances in winter by keeping oneself submerged in water, or surrounding oneself in summer by fire and the scorching heat of the sun. There are many other processes to understand the absolute truth, but the absolute truth is only revealed to one who has attained the mercy of a great devotee. How to get that mercy? So this is the dust of the lotus feet. One has to get that. Serve the dust of the lotus feet of the pure devotee to get his mercy. He gives us that opportunity. He offers us the dust in the form of his instructions, in the form of his movement, his devotees, his books, process, everything he's given. And more specifically, we can say literally the dust and the foot wash water and the remnants of their prasadam. These three items, Lord Chaitanya said, are very, very powerful items in achieving the mercy of the Lord, because, again, it can be with pride, but if it's in the right attitude, this is a mood of humility, becoming humble, giving up one's false pride, taking shelter of the dust, giving up one's false pride, and taking shelter therein of the lotus, no matter what level. Just like we heard the other day, Gorky Shordas Babaji Maharaj was illiterate from the material point of view, uneducated. And Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj was a very learned scholar, very, very learned. But he took shelter of the lotus feet of Gorky Shordas Babaji Maharaj, who at first was avoiding giving him shelter in terms of initiation. And one of the reasons was, he said, I am an uneducated fool. You were a learned scholar. How could I possibly give you initiation? Like, this is not possible. And Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj began to curse his education. To hell with this education. How unfortunate I am. I'm the most unfortunate wretch. So proud of my materialistic demeanor and education and so on. To hell with it all. If I cannot get shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord's ambassador, the Lord's representative, what is the use of all of this? Cursing himself, partly. This so-called education, decorations of a dead body. It wasn't that in the case of marriage, but in general, it's the case. We come with pride, thinking, I know, and I do, and I am. But it's an illusion that has to be removed if we really want the mercy of the Lord. And at the mercy of the lotus feet of the pure devotee, when we bathe in the dust of the lotus feet of the pure devotee, and then this is rolling in the dust, covering our body with the dust of the lotus feet of the pure devotee, when we absorb ourselves, service of the Vaishnavas, service of the instructions of the spiritual master, understanding the mood of the spiritual master, making that our life and soul, just like Prabhupada did. He made the instruction of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj's life and soul to preach Krishna consciousness. He made that his life and soul. Boom. So this taking shelter of the dust, bathing in the dust, is not, it can be, you could say sentimentally, a literal thing, but it's really to take shelter of the mood of the pure devotee of the Lord and to make that one's life and soul. That's why Prabhupada emphasized so much distributing books, because that was the mood of his spiritual master. He said, I learned everything from my father, Mohan Day, practically speaking, about devotional service, except for this major thing, the importance of the books, these transcendental literatures. And that is the mood of Prabhupada. So much he gave his life blood, life air, everything to translate, to comment on, to publish, and to see distributed these transcendental literatures. Because this is, with the combined with the Sankirtan, the holy name, the spreading of the holy name, combined with this is the method to change the world's consciousness. We're not interested so much in changing the world this way or that. That comes secondary. Vaccine, no vaccine, vegan, no vegan. All these things can be deviations from our objective goal. It's obvious that society is guided by Kali, and you don't have to qualify it by various efforts. Whatever you do, it's the case. You do what you do is one thing. But ultimately, it's to understand or to accept the mood of the spiritual master, that we have to take shelter at the dust of his lotus feet. And this is what will please Krishna and bring real peace, real freedom, real happiness, real unity, and awaken real love in this world, which presently is struggling on so many levels. So important is to distribute these lectures more than ever before. It will always be like that, but still it's an incentive more than before, how important it is to, along with pure chanting of the holy name and every other method we can of connecting people, of spreading or distributing these transcendental literatures. Somewhere or another, we have a few days left of the marathon. If you're involved, please enter into the mood of Srila Prabhupada, how he so much gave his heart and soul. Read the books and distribute the books, and help others to do so. Okay, Hare Krishna, we can go on and on and on. So much to read, so much to discuss in this subject matter. I'm going to finish there. Are there any questions? I'm going to go to the chat. Where are we? How do we find the chat? I'm going to go back to the page. Here we go. Chat. Anyone have any questions, please? There's a question here from Paris. Devotees sometimes focus on the difference that can occur in the opinions of acharyas, details about the tattva or philosophy of bhakti. Is it necessary to fully comprehend these details regarding philosophy in order to make spiritual advancement? How to approach Vaishnava philosophy with correct consciousness, humility, how to develop humility? Well, we may not, yes, if first of all, it isn't against our principle to use, Lord Chaitanya himself, logic and reason should be used in this direction. It's not the cause and it's not the goal. But if we have this tendency, it's to be engaged also. But it should be with humility and not with pride. I think I know better. Now I've concluded that this is the right commentary, or that's the right commentary. Prabhupada wasn't quite there, or whatever it is. That's a very dangerous mentality. Very dangerous. Because that conclusion is not the ultimate conclusion anyway. It's just a piece, a part. It's a part of the whole. It's not the whole. The whole reveals himself, or the Supreme Absolute reveals himself when there's genuine humility in our heart, not conclusive, so-called conclusive evidence on a particular aspect of Vaishnava Siddhanta or philosophy or whatever it is. We feel proud when we come to that situation. Sometimes that manifests in arguments, sometimes it manifests in offenses, sometimes it manifests in basically dismantling the very mission of the acharyas, which is to spread Krishna consciousness. Is not to come to a conclusion whether you came from this place or that place. That may be there, but that's not the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is simply to serve the dust of the lotus feet of the devotee eternally. That's the only goal that automatically, completely satisfies the heart of Radharani and consequently Krishna. Whether we know or don't know, We know from the pure devotees, they don't know that Krishna is God. They don't know any of these things. They don't care to know. It's useless, it's a waste of time. But if it helps us to surrender, if it helps us to increase our love for the devotees, if it helps us to increase our humility, then it has value. Otherwise, it is an obstacle on the path of bhakti. Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj describes it like that. It says, anything we do in the name of sadhana, which doesn't increase our humble, genuine attachment to Yuga Dharma, Harinam, Sankirtan, is an obstacle on the path of devotional service and is not a sadhana at all. It's an obstacle. So if it helps us to increase our attachment for genuine Trinadapi Sinichena, Taropi Sahishna, then all well and good. But otherwise, it is an impediment on the path of pure devotion. So you can't necessarily define it in black and white terms. It depends on the attitude, the result, etc. Because in an imperfect situation, the fact of the matter is, in our imperfect, when we view things from an imperfect platform, we're not going to get a perfect understanding. We have to follow our acharya, right or wrong, but we follow our acharya in terms of the process which he is giving us and taking shelter of his mood, his instruction. Everything will be revealed. Devotional reality, absolute truth is revealed. It is not analytically understood, it is revealed. But if analytical understanding or analytical approach helps us, so according to our situation, we'll all be different, helps us to develop genuine humility, then it is considered valuable. Otherwise, it's not. It's can be a deviation. Various. Another thing is blaspheming, the same as criticizing. Are we ever in the right to criticize another devotee? Seems the longer you live with devotees, these thoughts come alive. Can seem their thoughts override the good. How do we override the mindset? Yeah. Well, this is indeed a very, let's say, common scenario. Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj will talk much about this too. Pry not into the frailties of others. Look within and mend thyself. In other words, don't look for the faults in others. When faults in others delude and deride you, look within. Look within. See, why am I seeing this? Why am I seeing this? Not, I'm seeing this. Why? What is Krishna teaching me here? Am I seeing this and pointing this out? If it does good to the other person, if it does good, if we're in a position to do so, usually means that we're in a position of authority or in a position of and from the attitudinal point of view, a genuine feeling of compassion. I was reading this morning a very fascinating thing. I can't remember the name of the devotee, but there was one way back in history, a devotee who and I didn't read the whole story, so I can't tell the background, but I can tell the essential part. This devotee, somehow of these demons were trying to bring this devotee down, trying to find fault in him. They're trying to conquer him with something. But this devotee was so humble and tolerant, they would never become irritated or agitated them of what they did. So they went to Sukracharya. Sukracharya told the demons, they said, you go to where he is, and in the assembly there, you start blaspheming God and say there's no God, there's only atheism and so on. Then he'll become disturbed, you'll see. So they went there and they started to blaspheme God. And if you go to Tamil Nadu, I think probably that's where they came from. You'll see them, these signs, and at least when I was in the villages 20 years or more ago, everywhere. There is no God. Anyone who believes in God is a rascal, blasphemer, and so on and so forth. Posters everywhere. So these demons went to this devotee, and who was in meditation, deep in meditation. And they started to holler and shout and blaspheme. So somehow the devotee became a little bit, came out of his meditation a little bit, and saw what was going on. And, you might say he should become angry, but he wouldn't always become angry. He was in a different mood. He thought, oh my Lord, oh Krishna, please, how unfortunate that these persons have developed such an unfortunate attitude. Please, Lord, have mercy on them. Have mercy on them, my Lord. Please save them from this situation. He took a different mood. So the inner heart of a devotee is like that. It's not anger like we know it. It's an inner mood. And when they appear, if they appear to criticize or not criticize somebody, it is only with that mood, somehow or another, how to release that living it. And now, if we're not in that situation, if we're not eligible, like one time Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, he was with some disciples, and the disciples said, should we get angry with those who are blasphemers, those who are fault finders, Gurudev? And he said, yes, you should. But first you should see who is the fault finder. First you should look at yourself. Look in your own heart. And when I look in my own heart, I find nobody who is more of a fault finder than me. Nobody. So to whom should I get angry? He said like that. That soon put a stop to that. There's this tendency to look at everyone else but not look at oneself. Now this isn't like self-aggrandizement when we say that. It means to see that Krishna is trying to show us something. Okay, the other person may have their journey, but we have to make our journey. If we're not pure, there's so many, judge not others, lest thee thyself be judged. Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj gives the example of the needle on the sieve. The sieve is a culinary instrument through which you sieve flour and so on, to get out the grains which aren't meant to be there. And the sieve says to the needle, hey man, you've got a hole in you. What a nonsense. Sometimes it said those who live in greenhouses shouldn't throw stones. You know, we've got so much work to do inside it. We're missing the point. Finding faults in others is another trap, another deviation. We see faults in others. Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj said, when they delude us, they look within. Be humble. He said, only humility, tolerance, respect for others are only friends in Hari Bhajan. And if we're not in that position of compassion, we're ordered to do sometimes by our authorities. That's different. We're working under authority. But on our own account, who are we? Who are we to get angry or chastise somebody else when we ourselves are, riddled with shortcomings? So we see it as an opportunity to see our own shortcomings, not the shortcomings of others. That's easy to find. But that's not what we're here for. The whole world is very expert in that regard. It's material life. But we're here to change that. We're here to start to look within our own hearts at our own shortcomings and not judging. It's the same thing as the previous question, trying to measure things according to our own imperfect state of consciousness. You only get the imperfect result. So be careful. It's an easy one to fall into. Okay, that's that. Anything else? How do you override that mindset? By the process which Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj said, look within, pray. Please show me, Lord, what is it? Please protect me from this, dangerous tendency which I have. There has to be some feeling of repentance within our heart. Not justification, but repentance, not denial. Something genuine humility has to be there. And by serving the Vaishnavas, serving the Vaishnavas, by their grace, eventually this may manifest. Serving them means trying to assist them. Even it's tough. We know it's tough. Every one of us knows it's tough sometimes. It's easy to get into a rift with somebody. How do we preach to the Jaguars and Madais. In terms of Harinam, it makes sense that we can go all sorts of people, places to share the holy name, but how we apply this to book distribution. Sometimes we may try and pick out someone who looks favorable, try and avoid those externally looks unfavorable. Yeah, this is an ongoing kind of situation, something which you can find statements on both sides. And we were reading one the other day, I can't remember, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, chapter 7 or chapter 9, I think, 9 or 10. How Prabhupada was saying that in the same mood as Lord Chaitanya, who I said, not considering who's fit and who's unfit, who's willing and who's unwilling, the Lord distributed this Krishna consciousness to everyone. And Prabhupada says, in the same way, the followers of Lord Chaitanya should not discriminate. They should try to give Krishna consciousness to every living entity. And then on the other side, you have to use your common sense. It said, don't throw, in the Bible it said, don't throw your pearls before swine. Or it maybe it said, grow your seeds in a more fertile field. There are many different analogies, examples given here. So it's in the mood of giving it to everyone. According to one's capacity, one tries to distribute to the, let's say, the most possible, the most effectively speaking, those who are most, say, we can't discriminate accurately anyway, but to those who are most likely to take it. That's not easy for us to judge, but we do, sometimes we make some kind of judgment. Even amongst the Madhyamadikaras, there's some kind of judgment. They approach those who are innocent, avoiding those who are offenders. In other words, someone's very offensive, obviously very grossly materially entangled, they're not so likely to be inclined. So some kind of discrimination is there for Madhyamadikari, naturally. We can't be perfect in this regard, so you have to see. So sometimes in the public, we go to everyone we can. You never know. Many times you find that the most unexpected person is the person who takes the book. I probably mentioned it before. I remember a few months ago now, one of our new devotees staying here was previous at New Govardhan, Bhakti, perhaps the first book he distributed. He came with me on Harinam in Saint Michel in Paris, and I don't remember who it was. Maybe it was Jiva Pran or something was there, and I said to him, take. Okay, maybe it was Danitaya, maybe one was saying Joel. I think it's back to Joel actually. You go with him and maybe you like to do some books, never know. Give it a go. So he did, he went with him, and after a short while he felt, I'll do it on my own. He took it quick. So I was chanting, and there was this one old lady who looked like she was a street lady. She had like bandages on her legs and weird clothes on, and kind of a bit scruffy looking, to say the least, with a wheel, one of these supermarket trolleys in front of her with all of her stuff inside of it. A typical kind of street kind of person in Paris, moves around, stays here, stays there with all of their stuff. So she just stood in front of us, a few meters in front of me, just looking, gawking. And he was nearby. I just said, go speak to her. So he went and spoke to her. And I don't know what he said, but after a few minutes, she took the Bhagavad Gita and pulled a 20-euro note out of her pocket, God knows where from, and gave it to him. And said, because his first time, so then I said, give him the Bhagavatams as well. We had 2 first canto Bhagavatam. He gave those. She pulled out another 20 or 50-euro note or something, and he gave her some 20 euros back or 10 euros back or something. Then they gave her some more books, and she gave everything back. She gave 50 euros. She looked like the last person on earth who would buy books, You don't always know. You don't always know. And we have imperfect discrimination, but we have some experience. So with experience, you use your common sense and your experience in due course of time as well. Generally, we don't go up to a drunkard, but sometimes you do. There's a certain thing. The Lord in the heart is there too. The more we're tuned in to Krishna, the Lord guides people, and we're also one of the people. He guides us too. There's the Lord's guidance within the heart. So experience is there, intelligence, the instructions of not to give to everyone, and the Lord's guiding in the heart. So he's a relationship. It's not by chance those people are walking along the street when the devotee is there with Prabhupada's books. not by chance. They may or may not be ready to take it there and then, but they see it. They see the devotee. They may remember Krishna when they see you, especially if you've got tilak and devotee and stuff. They may remember Krishna when they see you. They think, oh, there's the Hare Krishnas again. So that's part of them becoming prepared to actually feel, let me look and see what this is. What are they actually doing, these guys? I see them here. They were here. We go on the street almost every day. At least they're devotees. I don't go so much. But in Châtelet, at Léal, it's like the most, what can you say, crazy part of Paris almost. But so many people of all different kinds coming and going all day long. The devotees are out there, 6, 7 devotees every day, all together almost, just trying to distribute books. And it's incredible, you see these Christians, they come out sometimes shouting their lungs out, screaming their top of their voices, to the public, banging on a book or something, banging on something. 1 hour, 45 minutes, they're finished and they're gone. Another one comes in and starts screaming. Now that guy's come back here. Surely if someone was to come and see, wait a minute, these Hare Krishnas were there at 11, they're still there at 7. It's not an ordinary thing to go out all day long. And sometimes you don't distribute any books. You never know. You don't always distribute a book. Sometimes Krishna has another plan. Nobody takes a book. Other days they just, you feel like you're just transparent via media. The books are just flying out. It's like that. So if Krishna's got his ultimate goal is to take you back to Godhead. He wants everyone back to Godhead. Of course, in one sense, it's not Krishna. In that sense, it's the devotees. They want you back to Godhead. Radharani wants you back to Godhead. She wants you back there. So by her mercy, the books are flying out some days. And some days they're not, because she wants you to go back to Godhead. It doesn't just mean some ticket you buy. It's a state of consciousness. So to help us to become Trinada Peace and it, sometimes she arranges things a little differently. When pride is there, then sometimes she, helps us to get free of that pride in a different way. There's a whole very mystical thing. So I would say, try not to be mental about it. Just try your best just to do your duty. Learn from others around you, if there are other book distributors. Otherwise, just go out, pray to the Lord for guidance. Take shelter before you start. Try to have good sadhana before you go. Chant rounds, read books. If this is the situation you find yourself in particularly, which we usually do, and try to tune into Krishna and pray to him to guide us in our efforts to be his instrument to distribute the knowledge about him. Try to be instrumental. It's not all about techniques or discrimination. It's about connection, connecting with our Guru, connecting with the Lord of the heart, being being a part of that great connection. And not that, it's the competition may be there to help inspire us to, it gives us our neophyte mentality. We kind of grow a little bit on that, but ultimately it's about connecting with a disciplic succession. We were reading the day Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, after his Guru Maharaj passed away in 1915, he was devastated in many ways. He went into recluse again like he did in 1904. Was just sat there in Yoga Pit, near Yoga Pit, Bhajapatna, just chanting, constantly chanting. He just didn't feel he was eligible to take this mission to the world. He felt like incompetent. And then one day he was in a trance-like dream state from the eastern side of Mandap. Suddenly, in his vision, he saw the Panchatattva entering in. He saw all the disciplic succession, his own guru, his father, Bhakti Vinod, Rupa Goswami, all the great devotees suddenly appeared before him and preached to him. Don't have any hesitation. We are all with you. We will be there. Whenever the need is there, we will reveal it. Have no fear. Just take up this mission and preach. This is the connection. We're not on that level of purity. But this remembrance, our business is to connect. We connect through sadhana, we connect through hearing and chanting, we connect through prayer, we connect through devotees, we connect through the books, like this. Try to be connected. And then the more we connect with Krishna, the more Krishna will connect with us and will guide you on the street, on Sankirtan, to do the right thing. whether it's everybody or one person, whatever. You may try different things to see what works, and you use our common sense too. And this will be the last one. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said that the best disciple is one who develops big affection towards his spiritual master. Please, how can we develop this affection? And again, it's a little bit akin to the subject matter today of the shelter of the lotus feet, or the dust of the lotus feet of the spiritual master. Big affection means, you could say, well, affection, let's see, what is big, what is small, but affection for the spiritual master. Baba said that worship of the spiritual master is not one of flowers and even words of praise. It's understanding the mood or the mission of the spiritual master and seeing how we can fully be a part. We can't be a whole, be a part of that with our whole heart, wholeheartedly, and not discriminating. That's not the right word. Not conditional, unconditionally. So that's, if we're talking of real, in a deeper or bigger sense of the term. Affectionate means that, as Prabhupada said, the only prayer that we need to have is, how may I serve you? We have to understand what it means to serve. Prabhupada says, serving the king means serving his servants too. Affection for the spiritual master has to include how I can relate, how I can serve the other devotees, how we can serve people in general, how I can serve other great Vaishnavas, and so on and so forth. It's not just a one-pointed thing, my guru, my guru, my guru, my guru. My guru is simply a representative of his guru, a representative of the spiritual realm, a servant of all living entities. All living entities are dear to my guru because they're Krishna's part and parcels. And if I ignore that part of my guru, I'm not really serving my guru. Of course, we're not on that level of absolute. We're not Uttama Bhagavats. We're trying to be canistas following a Madhya mood. So there's definitely going to be some, ups and downs. But we should try to see it, at least in the long run, in that light of how I can actually improve, how I can actually serve the other devotees more pleasingly to my spiritual master. What will please my spiritual master? Affection means, in any relationship, affection means how to please the object of my affection. What will please them, not what will please me. Guru Maharaj, I like to serve you directly. That may not be what the Guru Maharaj wants. Oh, Guru Maharaj, I want to do this, I want to do that. It may not really be what he wants, but he may say, okay, fine, because we're neophytes, we're canistas, and we haven't developed a genuine understanding of our relationship or devotional service. We're still basing it upon our material conditional situation. But if we do that in relationship with the spiritual master, gradually we'll become purified of the bodily concept of life and start to, get a bit off the mental platform. Maybe. It takes a while. We're so much on the mental platform most of the time, thinking that my mental platform is so important that Guru Maharaj has to solve my mental problem and facilitate my mental problem and get that other mental problem of someone else out the way, so my mental problem can be the prominent mental problem, and I can be, the greatest mental problem or disciple of my Guru Maharaj, or whatever it is. It's sometimes we're a little bit self-centered like that. So real affection means to put, you could say, a deeper affection. We may put that aside. We may not be ready for that, but you mentioned big affection. So it means all and everything, unconditional. Whatever you want to do with me, you can crush me in your embrace or make me brokenhearted. But that's on a high level, boy. You can't expect that in the beginning. But at least we could try to understand what their goal is, what the actual position is of a genuine disciple. We talk a lot about genuine gurus, but you don't hear much about genuine disciples. The actual emphasis given by the acharyas when it comes to the relationship is more on the disciple side. The disciple has to understand what it means to be a genuine disciple, one who's willing to sacrifice under any circumstance, not only their own wealth, time, etc., but their own mental proclivities, to put them aside. The process is usually to engage them or to learn how to manage them and so on and so forth. But sometimes it's a bit overboard, you could say. Prabhupada was so compassionate, so mercifully accepted. He said himself, because I accepted so many unqualified disciples, I have to go through all these sufferings. Generally speaking, accepting as a disciple is a very high thing. It's not just an initiation after 6 months of, mechanical chanting or whatever it is, but it's a very deep thing. Somebody who's completely surrendered and willing to accept as their life and soul the instruction of the spiritual master. It's very rare. Prabhupada was such a disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, but he's giving that compassionate opportunity to all of us, even though we're not qualified, practically speaking. We're still on a bodily and mental platform, or maybe a little bit intellectual. But as far as the fully surrendered platform, it's very rare. But that's the objective. At least we have to be aware of it. Try not to be a bird. Try not to be a burden. Try not to be a burden. In the beginning, Prabhupada gave all time to every devotee practically, because nobody knew anything. Everyone was brand new. But in the long run, Prabhupada said he had to do his service, bigger service. In the long run, he expected the devotees to deal with these things amongst themselves or from other senior devotees in the local area, or by studying his books. If you study Prabhupada's books carefully without, trying to put your own veneer of analysis on them, then all the answers will come. Open-hearted. Just try to open the eyes when we read Prabhupada's books. The answers will come. Just like they did when devotees came, when Prabhupada say, you have so many problems, you just come in front of me, and with one kick, all your problems will go away. And so many times, Prabhupada, you go into Prabhupada's rooms with problems, you suddenly realize you have no problems. Just in the presence of pure devotee, the sun, everything's dissipated. Because we're not associating with a pure devotee, we may have so many so-called problems because we're an illusion. We're an illusion. So come into the association of Prabhupada, try to read his books carefully, try to place ourselves as much as we can at our neophyte stage in the mood which would please Prabhupada. Behaving in such a way which would please the pure devotee, the Nivritta Krishna, Vigir Maharaj. Try to please that Niskinchana devotee as much as we can. I'm going to finish there today because we do hope to go on Sankirtan today, although in England we call Boxing Day. I don't know why they call it Boxing Day. Maybe they used to do boxing on this day. So we have Boxing Day too. We have to take boxes of books out on the street. There was also a Boxing Day for devotees in one sense, and distribute these books to the public. Some of them, not all devotees will go out. Some need to rest, but we hope to go out today and do a little Sankirtan here in Paris. We hope that you'll get this opportunity also. Some places we have lockdowns of different kinds, I know, but as much as possible, try to distribute these books. This will really help you to deal with a lot of these things, what is genuine affection? It comes. As I was reading this morning to Krishna Maharaj, he said, the taste for preaching comes by preaching, by going out on Harinam, on Food for Life, book distribution, public preaching programs, internet preaching, whatever you can do something. Try to share this message with others. Prabhupada said another time he said the best way to deal with all your mental problems is to think how I can be a part of spreading Krishna consciousness. What can I do to help spread this mission? This will help you to overcome your so-called mental problems. Instead of trying to think how I can resolve my problems, you can't do it like that. It's impossible. It's only when you get the mercy of Krishna, which comes by serving the dust of the lotus feet of the pure devotees. It will never go away. Don't worry. You get rid of one problem, and don't worry, two more are waiting to come in the door. They never end in this material world. We have to place ourselves in the spiritual bubble, spiritual environment of the Pure Devotees Association. There is no other protection in this world. Any amount of courses may be useful for up to a certain point, but they're not they don't remove the cause. They just remove some of the effects for some time, but karmically speaking, they do no good at all, because you've got unlimited parabdas and so many different, kutas and bijas and so many things which are just coming non-stop in this material world. Get rid of one another, come along. If devotees don't really take shelter, the essential medicinal cure for the problems, then all kinds of other things are not going to remove them. We just keep going from one to another. One service to another, one place to another, one guru to another, one book to another, one conclusion to another, and we really haven't gotten anywhere. Got to get out of this whirlwind of material turmoil and annoyances. Bhaktisiddhanta would describe this. Okay, all dear devotees, please forgive me, and really, I'm not qualified. I'm very fallen. I'm, somehow or another, doing what I'm supposed to be doing to some degree, not very effectively. Some of you have so-called taken initiation, but honestly speaking, we're not qualified really in the absolute sense of the term. But if we can guide you to Srila Prabhupada, connect someone or another to the parampara, but you also have to do your job. It's all there. The dust is there. Prabhupada's books are there. Just take that dust. The books are there. The instructions are there. The movement is there. The devotees are there. The services are there. You just have to smear them on their very consciousness all the time, as much as we can. Otherwise, we have no shelter. We have no shelter. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Gaura Premanandi. All glorious to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Bol. The best disciple will never abandon his spiritual master's instructions under any circumstance. One. Of course, if the spiritual master is actually not a spiritual master, is shown to be fallen, not following his guru maharaj, that's another thing. Otherwise, never. Life and soul. That's the idea. You never change anything. His guru maharaj. Never forgot him. He's living. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Prabhupada's Transcendental Book Marathon ki jai. Go Premanandi, all glorious to the assembled devotees. All glorious to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Jai Prabhupada, Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Tinamane, Namaste Saraswate Devi, Gauravani Pracharine, Nevasesha Sanyavari, Pastacharde Shatarine. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Haribo, 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 Hari
Hari
Bol.
Bol.
Can I hear anyone?
Hari Bol.
Someone saying
Hari
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 Bol.
Bol.
Hari
Hari
Bol.
Bol,
Hari
Hari
Bol.
Hari
Krishna,
Bol.
Hari
Hari
Bol.
Bol.
Hari
Jai
Bol,
Guru
wherever
Maharaj,
you are,
Hare Krishna,
every corner of the
Hare
universe.
Krishna Gurudev.
May the
Hari
holy
Bol.
name
Hari
be
Bol.
heard and chanted.
Jai.
May Prabhupada's books go everywhere. May the holy name be heard everywhere. May Prasada be on
Krishna Guru
everybody's
Maharaj.
plate. Hare Krishna, all glories to Prabhupada.
all good to the Prabhupada,
Hi,
Guru Maharaj.
everybody. Hare Bol, Philippines. I want to say a special message to the Philippines devotees. There are many Philippine devotees online. I hope you're all safe. I know that we've had a terrible typhoon, and I know that Cebu were very badly affected. So if all the devotees can please, and if you want to help, let me know. A lot of damage there. And also in Malaysia, some of their temples there have been flooded. So it's best for them. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Nandi, Hari Hari
Hari
Bol.
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 Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.